Hello, Flickin' fanatics and members of the Boba Fett Toration. This is your host, Jesse Swift and Sean Wingblade, with special guest today. Drumroll, please. Laura Kelly, that's right. And we will start the show and get into some spoiler talk right after this. Thanks for joining us. Hey, that's right. You heard it right. Look at the special guest right here. Laura, welcome to the show. So nice to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about chapter 4. We're finally we're getting into some good stuff, I think.
Yeah, we're rotating. It's a weird number. It's seven episodes. We're kind of like in that halfway point. We're in the turning point, I would say, of the show. And that is definitely a topic of conversation is, do we like the turn? Do we like the direction of the show? I think that'll be something we will talk about. But this is your first time being on the show. So again, welcome. Anyone that doesn't know, Laura is a very well accomplished Star Wars competitor in the movie trivia Schmodown, as well as just an all around awesome people and Star Wars fanatic. So it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. That's a really nice introduction. I appreciate that.
I try. I wish if I scripted more, I could probably make it sound even better because there's plenty of things to pull from. But yes, the wonderful Laura Kelly. Sean's here too. He's
I'm here.
Yeah, I like your shirt though.
We had ties to Mando in this episode, meaning sound cues. But you know what?
Damn
I think
right.
we all know what's coming.
That's right. That's what better be. Otherwise, that would be just the worst. That would be worse than WandaVision when we're all like, it's Reed Richards, and it's like, no, it's nobody, and nobody cares.
No.
But my shirt remains to be the best on the show.
Boba T.
Yep, this is the life of Boba, and he got a Star Wars champion Brennan Marr in the chat saying Laura is awesome. And
nice to see Brennan.
Allison says Laura's one of the best at promos as well as sure.
Yes.
Right. My wife and I commented at the beginning of the season. We're like, Laura is frightening in the best way, which is hilarious because in real life, just such a sweetheart. But
thank you.
I try not to ever bug people, but I had to DM you after that Joker promo, and just like that was fantastic. Thank you.
No, don't ever hesitate. Don't ever hesitate to do that because those are a lot of work. So thank you for saying that. And don't ever hesitate to reach out to somebody and be like, hey, that was cool. Send. That we appreciate it.
I did a whole bit in the FCL. It's true. It's all true story. Everything's true. In the FCL and about my kids throwing DVDs. And so at the end of the season, I wanted to tie it together and they're not throwing them at me anymore. Right. So I had him throw them off camera and I tried to catch it before it hit me in the face. And we must have done it for 30 minutes straight. And I got 2 or 3 where it was an actual good take on camera. And so I could actually edit whichever one I wanted to use properly. But it took forever. I get there's a lot that goes into it for
not easy.
2 minutes that you see before the match.
I wish I could say that I put that much work into my promos, but mine are baloney.
I got a dumbbell here. I'm gonna work.
All right, guys. Well, before we get into our massive spoiler talk, this is your first, only, and final warning. Full-on spoilers. We would ask that you please like the video if you haven't already. If you could share it, that would be even better. And if you're new to the channel, of course, subscribe because we always get awesome guests like Laura on the show. But as we were explaining to Laura briefly before the show, the way we break this down is we talk about our overall thoughts and feelings that can be both about the episode and if you haven't had the chance to talk about it before, how you're feeling about the show as a whole and where its trajectory is. And then we'll break down some of our individual pros and cons. And then probably my favorite part is doing chapter 4 predictions. And I think we can say that there's one prediction we all have that seems pretty set in stone. Don't let me down. All right. But as per usual, we start off with our guests. So bring up this banner here. Laura, please talk to us about how you're feeling about the show and what your thoughts about this episode were. You don't have to get into the nitty gritty, just overall.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to not get into the nitty gritty this time around. I have some just sort of in different feelings a lot of the time for a lot of what we've seen so far of the show. I kind of went into the show with that same thing in terms of like my general feelings about Boba Fett. I kind of I'm pretty neutral just on the character as a whole. So in that sense, I think I actually may have been at some advantage in coming into the show like that, because I think there's a lot of fans who are some real diehard Boba Fett fans that are maybe not getting quite what they expected out of this. And coming in with no expectations may have been the better way to go.
Can I ask you on that note a quick question? Do you think then the opposite of that, it's semi-detrimental to have a character that had like 8 minutes of screen time as a god tier character with all these expectations? Because I agree with you. I was kind of middle of the road until I saw him in Mandalorian, and that got me a little excited. But how do you feel about that?
I mean, I think that's a really good point. I have talked about this a little bit, but I just don't think that Lucasfilm did themselves any favors by choosing a legacy character like this, even though he only had like X number of lines in the original trilogy, and he had the most like ridiculous death on screen death. Like I think that there was just so much put into this character, like in Legends in the 90s and in books and in comics, that the expectations were just really high. Like they probably would have been better going with like another character like the Mandalorian, where we don't know anything about him. We're all coming in cold. So yeah, seeing some of the stuff in the discourse I've seen online about this character has been really interesting to watch, actually, just to see how the different parts of the fandom are sort of reacting. But overall, I've been, for the most part, like enjoying it. It's always nice to have Star Wars, live action Star Wars, and be back in the sandbox. Like, I'm, no pun intended, with Tatooine. It's been fun. I'm really excited about the Fennec Shand stuff that we got in this episode. I was a little bit annoyed that it took until episode 4 of this first season, our halfway point, to finally dig into some of that. But it answered a lot of questions, or one big question really that I had about their sort of dynamic. But I really enjoyed sort of getting to see exactly how all of that played out and when he found her, based on the little bit that we got in The Mandalorian, those little peaks. So this was fun.
And Sean, I do want to pass it off to you. The only point that I will make is, out of the entirety of this episode, an episode that had multiple set pieces and action bits, I found that my favorite part was actually them sitting around a fire, bonding over the life of a bounty hunter and what it might mean to move forward and leave that past behind. I thought that was where I was the most engaged, and I think some of the other stuff felt a little fluffy to me, but I would like to hear your thoughts on the show and this episode.
I agree with that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your input.
It's
great
always
to have you on the show.
It's always the character moments for me. The same thing was like, which, wrapped up our Hawkeye reviews before this series started. And it wasn't like the action set pieces. It was the character moments. It was the stuff with like the family dynamic and stuff. And I think the same is true for this. It's them, like you said, sitting around a fire, like bonding, and essentially Boba coming to terms with how like the Tuscans have changed him and how he's a different person. She specifically says they made you soft. And that was in the current time, not the past. I can't remember now where the quote happened, but and he goes, no, they made me stronger. And that speaks to his growth, and well, not even his growth as like us we're just finding out about his character as a whole, because we're actually fleshing him out and not just the whatever thought and whatever we wrote in our heads for the last 30 years since he first appeared or whatever. And so that's always the pieces they're gonna hit. They can have some cool action beats, and like they do, and they did with the Sarlacc monster. I'm sure, Laura, you probably know the name for it. I don't know the name for it, but like they'll do the flashy stuff because they kind of have to. But the character dynamic and the character pieces are always gonna be the top notch parts for me.
I mean, lucky for them, they got Tamora Morrison, who maybe some would argue, but I think he's a walking charisma machine, and everything that he does, I'm just absolutely glued to watching that.
I want the sequel to this to be Boba just raising random Star Wars animals and creatures on a farm. That's
I would watch that show.
He is just an animal. He just loves all the creatures.
It's Book of Boba Fett 2 at the farm.
Yeah, basically.
I fully agree with that. So now that we move past some of our basic thoughts let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty, or at least some highlights. And we're going to get into our pros and cons. But before we do, I want to let everyone here know that both pinned on top of the comments and in the description should be our Streamlabs link. And if you want to direct the conversation, or there's a very specific moment about the show, feel free to donate through that. Or if there's something you want to ask Laura specifically, that is the place to do it. Now let's move on to pros and cons. And once again, starting off with our guests. Laura, what really worked about this episode and what maybe didn't work about this episode for you?
I'm sure things that like specifically didn't work will come to me, but I'm gonna kind of focus on, I think, the positive for now. The stuff that we got with Fennec Shand that I mentioned at the top was that, I needed one question answered at the very beginning of this show, and that is, does she actually have like free will to leave if she wants to, or does she owe him some sort of debt and that she's like tied to him, and that's why we're seeing the two of them together at the end of The Mandalorian and why we're seeing them together here. And I was very relieved to get that answer finally in this episode of like, no, he gave her the freedom to walk away and told her that she doesn't, she paid her debt. What's done is done. She can be on her merry way at this point. And I enjoyed some of the little moments between the two of them during the show. I don't think it doesn't look like it's supposed to be like a romantic thing, which I'm sort of grateful for. At one point I thought maybe that might be kind of cool, but I don't know if it would actually work. I like the dynamic that they have right now, where they're just kind of like getting to know each other in like a real chill but like reserved way, because they're sort of both used to being so isolated in their lives, and they're kind of learning slowly how to like come out of their shell and get comfortable with each other. And I like watching the evolution of their relationship in that sense. So the Fennec stuff is really what did it for me in this episode, particularly that one shot where the ramp to the fire spray is closing, and you kind of just one little shot of like her eyes like as the door closes. Mm-hmm. It's just a really fun, like playful moment where she kind of smirks right before the door closes, and I just loved it. The other thing I really loved in this episode was the bantha. I loved the bantha wagging its tail and getting fed and then riding off into the sunset to make baby banthas. I just thought that whole part was really cute. So I like all the animal stuff too.
I feel like Star Wars is going above and beyond of making like every creature very sympathetic, which I think is a little rude, because now in hindsight we're going to go back and watch these shows and these movies and see all the death and be like, this is awful.
It's brutal.
That is the animated spin-off Fett and Pets.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Jake Acavetta in the chat. What's up, buddy?
What up, Jake?
How you doing? We're just talking about our pros and cons about the show and how much we love Boba and his animals. Did you have any other highlights, Laura?
That covers the first of them, I think, for me. That might be the first that come to mind. I really don't know if I have anything specific to knock about this. I kind of enjoyed this episode. Yeah, episode 2 is still my favorite. Like, I still loved all of the flashback stuff we got with the Tuskens in that. But this is pushing a close second place.
I think I remember, if you want to remind us what your thoughts were on the whole mod crew from the previous episode. Or the episode before.
Oh,
can't remember.
Yeah, I definitely didn't hate them.
And what did you think of the little bit that we saw in this episode, and in the how we saw that Fennec got essentially recovered and upgraded? I guess upgraded.
Sean reached out to me and was like, "Hey, Thundercat made his acting debut in Star Wars," and I was like Lionel.
I was watching Heroes Reforged. Shout out to those guys, and they were doing their review, and they immediately, or one of them immediately, Augustine, I think, knew. He's like, "Oh, that's Thundercat." I was like, "What is that?" Same thing with you.
I don't know what
Thundercat. There's a Thundercat, and I just Googled the guy, and he has the exact same hair. Apparently, he's a musician, so that was like their celebrity cameo, I suppose, for this episode.
Not distracting at all. He fit right in with that group.
He definitely fit in with that group for sure. Then his arm,
fit right in.
Yeah, his tri-piece arm going in.
Yeah, the tri-piece arm, I was a little bit confused right at first because it looked like it was a pizza slicer on it, and I was like, why does he have? Oh, it's a saw. Never mind. It like that is actually what it has in my notes. I think that was another thing I was just kind of like not surprised to see that there was like a gang of street youths that all had really colorful Vespas. I'm not sure why there was like such a strong pushback and people being like, this doesn't look like Star Wars. to each their own. Everybody can have their opinion whether or not it looks Star Wars or not, but like it or not, it is Star Wars now. So take a seat and just enjoy it for what it is. We're getting a little bit of color on Tatooine, a planet of sand. Like you have to mix that stuff in somewhere, and I'm grateful that they're doing it.
That's the reason you get different showrunners and different directors, is so you can add some flavor and some spice, like no pun intended, into this world. And the only conversation that I had was actually one with me and my wife that we came to agree is like we didn't hate the inclusion of them. They do feel very out of place in the world of Tatooine, but we don't know if they were stolen, imported, maybe from Coruscant. Like, we don't know the backgrounds of this Vespas. Do we need to know? Not necessarily. The thing is that they could exist in the Star Wars universe. I think it was just jarring to see them on Tatooine. And what I kept telling people is, like, think of those, like the chase scene in Attack of the Clones. You're telling me that these things probably aren't running around in the underworld? Absolutely they are. So it's just a matter of where they came from. So I definitely didn't have a big deal with it. I thought it was a lot of fun, and the like callback to American Graffiti and some things like that.
Exactly.
Good times.
And it fit in well with how Fennec recovered, essentially getting, modded up on her insides. I don't understand how she still needs to eat now because her stomach is completely gone, which I
clearly there's a straw, but you'd think that maybe just fluids.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. It does all the work up from ribs up, basically.
I think that was one of the reasons that I didn't necessarily need a deep dive into how they fixed Fennec, because I'm like, oh, well, now you're just causing me to ask questions that I didn't really feel the need to ask previously.
I felt like that scene in itself kind of fleshed out the rest of the mod crew a little bit, where you see it's not just these 4 or 5, but 4 of them, I think. Yeah. And it's more, it's a whole culture. It's all the young people, whatever money they have, I suppose they're going to, spend on the mods. And he even says, and I got a picture of that too, like he even says, because aren't you a little old to be here?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Right away. He's like, yeah. So it's the young kid thing to do. When you get money, it burns a hole in your pocket. You want to spend it. You want to buy the cool stuff. You want the cool kids, and that's what they're doing.
We get tattoos that we get to choose whether or not we're going to regret later on in life. They replace an arm, and they're like, maybe I'll regret this when I'm 90.
Yeah.
Did you have any? I know Laura said she's pretty positive about the show. And what I found interesting is this, not that it's bad, but I came away from this episode liking it the least of any of the episodes. And I was like, well, this is it. This is where the entire internet just like craps all over and says they're down with the show. And I went online and everyone's like, oh, it's really turning around for me. I said, what? So I think I'm completely missing the mark or whatever on how I'm supposed to feel about this show, because I've been defending like the first 3 episodes, and then 4 I'm met on, and everyone else is just like, oh, it's the best.
Everyone is torn. We're all so all over the place, I feel like, with the positivity, as Amber stated, but that's, I guess, it's not everyone's cup of tea.
I love where we're going though. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, is like, even in the beginning, my wife Lauren was really into the Tusken stuff. I was like, yeah, the Tusken stuff's cool, but I'm here for the Godfather mobster mafia element. Like, I want to see what a bounty hunter does when he's just got all of this life thrust upon him, because he has no training, he has no experience to properly prepare him for this. Right. So that's kind of what I was most excited for. So now, knowing that we're leading to an all-out war between the Pike Syndicate, and every episode pretty much Boba's picking up allies, and so I'm ready for this. You got the mod crew, now we got Black Chrysanthemum. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic. Because we've been
said it fast enough that I didn't notice if it was bad.
Black or Super. Yeah. So seeing him, and we'll talk about my pros. I love the scene of him in Jennifer Beals' bar, which, by the way, speaking of Jennifer Beals and Ming-Na Wen, these women do not age at all. No. It's incredible. I don't know what kind of black melon that they're drinking. But anyways, I loved that she has this whole almost like monologue of trying to calm him down. It's like, you were great, you were a champion, but those times are behind you and stuff like that. And I was like, please, because you are not Chewie, do not put that fellow down. Rip an arm off or 2. And I got my wish. Maybe I'm demented. There could be something wrong with me. But it was 5:00 in the morning. I was watching the show by myself at that time. And I had an evil little chuckle.
Listen, that guy was a Trandoshan. I'm sure he did something to ask for it.
So. At some point, right?
I wouldn't let it weigh on you.
If you're in Mos Espa, chances are you have a criminal background.
He's like he thinks about it. He goes, worth it.
I feel like the compromise was that he only took one arm. He's like, you know what? You're right. I'm gonna take one.
Let's keep one.
There wasn't enough. Maybe I think I'm twisted. There should have been more screaming. If my arm was ripped off, I would be a lot louder than that Trandoshan laying on the ground.
I love that Boba just stood there and watched too. He's just like, I'm just gonna watch what happens. I don't know. This isn't my place. I'm not here. It's regular.
I love that. It seems like Chrysanthemum just really needs a purpose and a mission. Because if he's just left to sit and spin, he doesn't know what to do. He just starts fights. Like those guys weren't doing anything. They were just happy. He's like, you know what? Screw these guys.
Yeah.
So that was a highlight for me. I love that.
Boba told him, he's like, hey, go, be free. You're free now. You know, you're not under the Fets anymore. The Huts anymore, not the Fets. And he didn't know what to do. He was just chilling.
Right.
He's like, I'm waiting for a purpose. Anyone want to hire me to do something? Well, now Boba did. To join, like you said, he's amassing an army.
I have to agree with Allison when Jennifer Gold said "hit it, Max." That was one of the best lines of the episode.
1000%. Yeah,
it's
she's
great
totally
to hear
right.
Max's name out loud, actually in Star Wars canon, and not have to crack open your encyclopedia to get that.
Max, got it. All right,
Max.
I'll remember this one. Easy to spell.
So let's talk about a couple things here. Did you guys all really enjoy the Sarlacc scene?
I actually did. I enjoyed it. It's more than I would have thought because the fire spray is one of those, another one of those things that I'm just kind of like, people are so hot and bothered over this ship and its name, and whether be it positive or negative, people have strong feelings about it. And I'm just like, it's another ship in Star Wars. I don't know. But this was actually really cool to see because the best thing about the fire spray is that it has seismic charges. Mm-hmm. So everybody in their cousin that was watching this episode that liked the prequels even a little bit enjoyed this part. I think I would hope so.
The guns are shooting just into the sand and they can't get anything, we're all like, okay, who's gonna hit the button? Like we're waiting for it, right?
Somebody do it.
As I told Lauren, I was like, that Sarlacc is not a little dead. It is very dead. Like there's vaporized. Somehow the Sarlacc returned. He's dead. He's gone. So I enjoyed that. I thought that was a lot of fun. And again, building on the dynamic between Fennec and Boba. Looking forward, is there any other pros and cons you guys want to cover for the episode?
I'm curious to hear what you guys think about the whole chasing the LEP servant droid, the little rabbit droid, through the kitchens in the palace. I just am curious to hear what people are thinking about this because I actually haven't heard a ton of reaction about this part specifically yet. So you guys take it away.
I'm not going to be dramatic.
Let's call the rat catcher.
It's dumb. I think it's dumb. But the defense that I made for some of the earlier episodes of Boba, when people are like, oh, this is stupid or this is too silly, I'm like, Star Wars is often silly, dumb, and fun. It's more often than not those three things. And you should enjoy it for that. But it also has, other things on its mind sometimes when you get to like a Rogue One or something like that. This aired on the side of dumb, and it was a little dumber than I would have liked. But I'm not going to sit here and spend an entire week talking about it like yesterday or like a couple of days ago. I'm still seeing people talking about the Vespas. I was like, guys, let it go. We're on to the next. We're moving on. So yeah, I'm not going to get hung up on it. It wasn't my favorite.
Well, I'm going to make it my whole entire online persona. I'm going to create an entire new account that may or may not have my real name, and I'm just going to continue to bitch about it. I have in all caps in my notes, fanboys are going to hate this. Because the second time I watched it, I was like, oh boy, this is going to be fun to talk about, I think. I thought it was kind of silly and fun, but I like when Star Wars is silly and fun, so I didn't have a problem with it. But I just knew it from the beginning. People are going to have a problem with this.
Star Wars is for kids too, and they need a silly fun part to lash onto. We got very little of the chef, and I wanted more before his throat got cut. Yeah. I think it was the chef's throat that got cut, right? She took him out very quickly, and she's like, "Yeah, no, we're not going to deal with all of those knives."
Brennan with the hard disagree. It's not dumb. Shut up, Jesse.
It's not dumb.
Idiot.
Thank you, Brennan.
We have lovers of it. It can be exactly what it is.
I think honestly the biggest pop for me was funny because I think there's so many people that are like, who? But when the directed by credit came up, and I will butcher his last name. I'm sorry. I've said Tankrion in the past. I don't know how it's actually pronounced. But Kevin, say Kevin T, is known for directing first a short. It was about 11 minutes long on YouTube called Mortal Kombat Rebirth. That was like a reimagining of what the Mortal Kombat universe could look like. And then Machinima picked that up and like sponsored him basically. And he did 2 seasons of a show called Mortal Kombat Legacy. That were all like 8 to 9 minutes long. And I ate that shit up. And so when I saw his name, I was like, dang, this is like the first thing he's done in a decade that I know of. Cool. And honestly, that was like the biggest smile I had of the whole episode. And I was like, I'm broken.
Well, it's interesting because we thought this was supposed to be Bryce Dallas Howard's episode. I feel like that information came out at some point, and I'm not sure where it went wrong. And then she was even credited on IMDb for, I think, the first couple hours this was out. I'll be curious to see when she does show up, because in terms of directors, we're still waiting on the Filoni episode, waiting on the Bryce Dallas Howard episode. Are there any other directors that we're waiting on still for the last 3?
I actually do not know usually like with Mandalorian, I knew the lineup way before it came out, but this one I'm not sure. Like we've had 2 Robert episodes. Who did? Oh, the second episode was
Steph Green.
Oh, Steph Green, that's right.
I thought Robert had been originally slated to direct way more. And then hearing the mix of directors, kind of like they did, I think, for Mando season 1, where it was basically a different person every time, and a couple of them did like 2 episodes or something. So I didn't know that it was gonna be. I thought it was all gonna be kind of like one vision, not quite exactly what they're doing, but I mean it's all one vision, it's all Favreau, but you know, I don't know. I haven't looked up the obviously there's bad information out there too, because if we thought it was Bryce doing this one, then who knows what it is. And IMDb is not really the most credible source anyway, because anyone
clearly not. Yeah.
So there you
go. Let us move on to our chapter 4 predictions, which will be interesting because likely we're not going to have any more flashbacks because of 2 things. One, we got all caught up where Fennec and Boba were on the throne. They kind of skipped over any intermingling with Mando in the flashbacks. And then the droid said, you know, congratulations, Master Fett, you're all done. And I was like, okay, so that seems like kaput on the flashbacks. So now we're moving forward in present for the next 3 episodes, 5, 6, 7. What do we expect? I know we're looking at an all-out crime war. What characters would we expect to see? What would we like to see? Predictions. Laura, let's start with you. You can go ahead and state the obvious first.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to predict than the obvious. I mean, the fact that we got that little music cue at the very end, hinting that you can buy muscle. Are we gonna buy our way into bringing the Mandalorian back? I don't know. We'll see. But I'm excited to see where that part goes. Because there's like that hint that we're getting some Mandalorian possible cameos. That almost makes me wonder if like the next one, I guess it could still be Bryce Dallas Howard, but I'm almost like, well, maybe they would give that one to Filoni. I don't know. But I think that when it comes to predictions and stuff, I'm happy to kind of go in cold. I have wondered out loud a little bit whether or not we might be in the grand arena at any point, whether it's for a pod race or not. I don't know. We know that Jabba used to preside over those, and I just thought it would be kind of interesting to see Boba in that position. But anything in the grand arena might be cool. We saw in Visions that there was a concert that was put on there, so maybe we'll take a stroll over there, maybe not. And then when I saw
to see some pod racing,
yeah, or even just like some pods, like just like kind of hanging out outside of like Mos Eisley, Mos Espa, it would just be nice to see a little cameo of one. I did make a prediction last episode saying that Black Chrysanthemum was going to come back and Boba was going to recruit him. That was probably a more obvious one, but I'm happy to see that play out, and I want to see what else we're going to get with I think she called him Santo. Gartha called him Santo.
Yeah.
And I like that's easier, so I might go with that too. Yeah. But yeah, hoping for
Santa
more.
Claus.
There you go. I'm hoping for more in Garsa's Sanctuary because I like that space and I want to be in there more because it just looks like a lot of fun. So I think it's one of those things where it doesn't like take you out of the episode, but it just kind of gives you like a breath of fresh air every time we see it. So I'm just hoping for more of that too.
And Allison wants a Chrysanthemum and Mando hangout. I would like to see Mando look up at him like, not sure about him. I think, I mean, I don't know if I'm sure this will be episode 7, but first I need more Rancor so that we can lead up to Boba Fett like he did with the Mythosaur riding the Rancor. Now with the mention of the Mythosaur in, I want to say episode 1 or 2 of Mando, and also Boba Fett saying, I have ridden bigger things than the Rancor. I'm like, okay, so we all know the holiday specials canon at this point, right? Like, it's indisputable.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to see Mandalorian. If it wasn't going to be next episode, why play the theme right now? Right? Like, if it was going to be the episode after, you could play the theme at the end of the next episode. So we got to see Din Djarin in the next episode. What does that mean? He was left in a very strange place, having basically handed off Grogu and being at odds, I would think, with Bo-Katan. What causes him to be like, okay, yeah, it's cool for me to dip out now? Like, I feel like we're missing something in like a few weeks of Mando story, but maybe they'll enlighten us on that. That's what I'm looking forward to. I hope this war is 2 episodes long. I hope 6 and 7 are just all out chaos. And this last episode is the last bit of like ramping up before we get there. Sean, do you have some predictions?
Well, they talk about buying muscle, right? Do we think that they need to buy Din's like allegiances, or would he pay back a favor or something? Or even do a favor for a favor, like, hey, I might be taking on, Mandalore.
Yeah.
Maybe you could help me after I help you, type of thing, or lend me some of your whatever other muscle you have. Let Santo come with me once we're done, because I'm gonna need some muscle of my own.
I do think we might get a returning Tusken. There was a couple bodies not shown in that village, and I think there's got to be more reason than just the character arc of Boba Fett. I think that it's got to come full circle, and we get Tuskens helping him at the end.
They make a point to say. Is BD8, right? Says like you're fully healed.
Yeah.
Like, okay, does that mean we're done with flashbacks though? Are we going to focus more on the present day story so we can actually, because we haven't really moved the present day story along very much as far as time wise. We haven't spent a ton of time there. We've been.
I didn't think about that, but I think that probably was our clue. I think that's a good point.
So I think that, like you're saying, Sean, I think that element of the story is going to start clipping along much faster now, because we're going to get 30 to 50 minutes in the present day.
Another piece of muscle that we could see him trying to figure out where Cobb Vanth is so he can get his armor back. And so that could be another, because he's floating around Tatooine somewhere, right?
Yeah, that was a pretty big skip in the flashbacks when it's just like, okay, they got the ship and now the suit, but like, how did he find Mando?
Yeah,
but he got the armor back in the Mandalorians. We've already seen that, so true. I wonder if they're just gonna let that lie, instead of like regurgitating it in the show.
Bill Burr is muscle you can hire. That's a point.
If we're gonna see some characters, I'd like to see at least a small cameo from Timothy Oliphant, like in the next, like leading up to a bigger part in like the finale where he shows up to help him in the final battle, type of thing.
And Cobb Vanth is
just
fantastic. Speaking of
just to get this eclectic crew of, it's not like a whole army he has, but he has all these very specific individuals who all have their own skill set. So it's like an RPG video game. Like everyone has their own, their own set of class essentially, and then they can all go to town. And then you get the mod racers, possibly the Tuskens, like a whole crew or a whole village of Tuskens.
We need the mod racers on pod racers. That's what I want to see.
That's the war that they're talking about. I don't know if you knew that. That's
mods versus pods.
I'm honestly excited to see that group of kids back, if for nothing else than like just thriving off of the vitriolic, toxic fandom.
Yeah, that's the kind of pettiness I'm here for.
Yeah,
those mods would definitely go to the When We Were Young show. That's definitely never going to happen in Vegas, because
that's definitely a scam.
I don't want to talk about this because I am so reeling from my trauma of my hype level that has now crashed and burned, and we are going through some therapy here at home. But make safe choices out there, everybody. Okay, well that wraps up, I think, most of our thoughts. Any last predictions that come to mind before we start closing it out?
Overall, still thumbs up. It's good. It's silly in parts, but
I'm giving it a solid.
All of the silly parts that everyone bitches about are such small pieces of the show. Look at the overall show and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's just also stop taking it so seriously. Enjoy some content. Like not every Marvel show has been in game. It's not always the best, but I would rather have some stuff than nothing. After dealing with 2020 and getting nothing of anything that I care about, I will take a Hawkeye. I will take a Boba Fett. We're gonna get Moon Knight and Doctor Strange, and life's gonna be good. We have a plethora of riches, and y'all need to stop complaining. That's my 2 cents, 3 cents.
And we're gonna get Kenobi and Cassian and Mando season 3 and Bad Batch. We've got good stuff in the can, I think, with Star Wars coming this year. So
and you don't. Everything is for somebody, and not everything has to be A1 for you.
Yeah,
that's why there's so much content coming out. Like the Acolyte is my number one most anticipated thing. Maybe some people are going to skip that. That's fine. Anyways, okay.
I'm interested because you mentioned Kenobi. We're now spending almost, so far at least, we're spending an entire show on Tatooine.
Yeah.
Is Kenobi also going to spend his whole show on Tatooine? Can we get off the desert planet? Like,
I wonder, get off the desert planet.
Right. I wonder if he might travel a little more. If they're actually as thoughtful as thinking that, like, hey, we just spent 7 episodes. Like, let's send Kenobi out and bring him back, obviously at the end. But
we know
let him
pretty much for a fact that he's going to leave at some point because there's
Vader.
That concept art they showed, that is not Tatooine. That's 100% not Tatooine. That looks a lot more Mustafarian.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're talking about like this rematch between Kenobi and Vader. I'm like, Vader's not coming back to Tatooine. No. I can tell you that right now. Like he's staying far away. Like, he's gonna be like, you have to come to me for this.
No sand. I won't go.
I would love for the ship to get to Tatooine and like the little plank to come down and him to get just to the edge of the plank. Go pass.
That's why he didn't chase after the droids in New Hope. That's why he sent someone else to do it. He's like, I'm not going. No, it's
Star Trek. That is a fantastic point. On top of all these great shows, Lego Skywalker is coming out. Can't wait for that. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Laura. I know you got to get out here in a timely manner. We appreciate you being here for the conversation so very much. So please let me drop this banner down right here. Let the people know where they can find you.
Sure. Come find me on Twitter at @shutup_Laura. I like to tweet a lot about Star Wars lately. It's been a lot of High Republic because that is all I want to think about all the time, always, because it's amazing.
I have to ask you, I've only read the first book. I liked it. Is the rest pretty good so far?
Awesome. The rest, you have no idea what you're in for. Like that book kicks off so much wonderful stuff. I'm excited to hear what you think when you get into it. It's going to be great.
Gotta get back into it.
Yeah, but if you want to come find me on YouTube, you can find me on John Roca's channel. We do a show called The Jedi Way where we talk about Star Wars, and then I'm doing reviews of the Book of Boba Fett with the Geek Buddies. So stay tuned for those. And then the show that I host with my friend Alice is called Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour, and you can find that on all major podcast platforms.
Let's just say Force Toast, is that just audio?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I will look that up because that one I didn't know about. I knew about the other ones, but we'll follow you over there on the audio platforms. Sean, outside of Flick and Reel, where can the folks find you?
You could find me over here on Twitter, and also, I don't know where I'm pointing. Over here, follow us on Instagram. Flick and Reel Fancast on Instagram.
Yes, absolutely. That is
and
our newly
separate the letters right. Yeah, there.
Up and running Instagram page where we just, as of today, hit 100 followers. So let's get to 200. We have over 200 on YouTube. So everyone watching this video, pop over there, click a like, and follow, sub-follow, whatever it is. All right, you can find me on Twitter at Jesse Swift. You can find me on all the places that Sean said because we do a lot of things together. But with that, thank you so much. Take it easy. Make sure to listen to this on February 1st. That is Allison Salomoni's Behavior Geekology coming up soon. And with that, goodbye. Keep it real. And may the force be with you.